a man saw you 2 days ago and recognized something divine in your face. He won't stop searching. His name is James, a 34-year-old man living in a bustling city, caught in the rhythm of work, bills, and the quiet ache of wondering if life holds more. That moment, that fleeting glimpse of divinity in a stranger's face, wasn't just a moment, it was a spark that set his soul ablaze. James felt like he'd seen God, not in a grand vision or a sacred place, but in the gentle glow of a smile. It was as if the universe paused, whispering, "There's more to life. Find it." That spark wasn't just a feeling, it was a call, a divine invitation to wake up and see the sacred in the everyday. James was walking through the crowded streets of his city that day, his mind heavy with the weight of routine. The noise of honking cars, shouting vendors, and hurried footsteps swirled around him, but he felt disconnected, like a leaf floating on a river, carried by the current but not sure where it was going. He stopped at a small coffee shop, craving a moment of quiet. That's when he saw Hira, an old woman sitting alone, her face etched with lines that told stories of joy, sorrow, and resilience. She looked at him and smiled, a soft, knowing smile that seemed to hold the weight of eternity. Their eyes met, and for a split second, James felt something shift inside him. It was like a light flicked on in the deepest part of his soul, illuminating corners he didn't know existed. Her face wasn't just a fascia, it was a window to God, a glimpse of the infinite. That smile stayed with James, lingering like a melody he couldn't forget. It wasn't about the woman herself, but what she carried, a spark of divinity, a truth that felt like love, like peace, like home. He wanted to hold on to that moment, to feel that connection again, to understand why it felt so real. So, James began to search. He looked at every face in the crowd, hoping to catch that same glow. He visited churches, sat in meditation, and pored over spiritual books, but the spark seemed to slip through his fingers like sand. The more he chased it, the more lost he felt, like he was running after a star that vanished in the daylight. Yet, that restlessness was a gift. It was the divine stirring within him, urging him to keep going, to dig deeper. Have you ever had a moment like that? A moment where the world seemed to pause, and you felt connected to something bigger? Maybe it was a stranger's kindness, a quiet prayer that brought tears to your eyes, or the way a sunset painted the sky with colors that spoke to your soul. Those moments aren't random. They're God's way of tapping you on the shoulder, saying, "I'm here. Look closer." They're reminders that the divine isn't locked away in a temple or a distant heaven. It's woven into the fabric of your life, waiting for you to notice. James didn't know it yet, but that moment at the coffee shop was the start of a journey, and not to find God in the world, but to uncover the divine within his own heart. The days after that encounter were restless for James. He couldn't stop thinking about that smile, that feeling of touching something eternal. It was like a fire had been lit inside him, burning away the numbness of routine. He started asking big questions. Was that God? Was it a sign? Why did it feel so alive? He felt like he was standing on the edge of a great mystery, teetering between doubt and wonder. So, he did what most of us do when we're searching. He looked everywhere. He walked through sacred places, sat in silence under ancient trees, and talked to wise people in his city. He visited a small chapel where the air felt heavy with prayer, hoping to feel that spark again. He joined a meditation group, closing his eyes and breathing deeply, searching for that same sense of connection. Each step felt like a piece of the puzzle, but the picture was still incomplete, like a map with missing roads. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, James met an old man named Samuel, a street vendor who sold fruit from a weathered cart. Samuel had a warm laugh and eyes that seemed to see straight into your soul, as if he knew your story before you spoke. James sat with him, pouring out his heart about the woman, the smile, and his endless search for that divine spark. Samuel listened quietly, his hands folded, his face calm. When James finished, Samuel smiled and said, "You're chasing a light you already carry, James." That woman's smile wasn't the divine, it was a mirror. It showed you the God that's already in you. Stop running. Start looking within. His words were simple, but they landed like a thunderbolt, shaking James to his core. In him? How could that be? James was just an ordinary guy, full of doubts, flaws, and mistakes. He wasn't holy, wasn't perfect. He'd lost his temper at work, forgotten to call his mother, and sometimes felt like he was failing at life. But Samuel's voice was steady, certain. "Every soul is a piece of God," he said. "That spark you saw? It's in your heart, in your breath, and the way you love, even when you stumble. You don't need to find it, you need to remember it." James sat there, stunned, as the truth settled into his bones. What if the divine wasn't out there, in some far-off place or perfect moment? What if it was in him, waiting to be recognized, like a seed waiting for water to grow? Let's pause and think about this for a moment. Have you ever felt like you're searching for something you can't quite name? Maybe it's peace, purpose, or a sense of belonging. We often look outside at new jobs, new places, new relationships, but the truth is, the divine is closer than you think. It's the way you keep going, even when life is heavy. It's in the love you give, even when your heart is tired. It's in the quiet take that pushes you to ask, "Is there more?" That take is God, calling you home to the spark within your soul. James was beginning to see this, and it changed everything. He started to shift his focus, turning inward instead of chasing the divine in the world. He began meditating every morning, not to find answers, but to listen. At first, his mind was a storm of worries about work, regrets about the past, fears about the future. But slowly, he learned to let the noise fade, like clouds parting to reveal the sun. He'd sit quietly, breathe deeply, and ask, "God, what do you want me to know?" In the stillness, he began to hear an odd voice, what a feeling, a gentle knowing that felt like truth. It was like rediscovering a language he'd forgotten, a conversation with the divine that had been going on all along. One morning, during meditation, James had a vision that shook him to his core. He saw himself as a child, running through a field under a wide, endless sky. His laughter echoed, pure and unfiltered, as if he was one with the earth, the wind, the stars. In that moment, he felt connected to everything: a God, the universe, life itself. It was like his soul was singing, "You are enough. You are divine." Tears streamed down his face as he realized the spark he'd been chasing wasn't something to find, it was something he'd always had. It was his birthright, a gift from God woven into his very being, like a flame that never goes out. This is a truth we all need to hold close: you are a spark of the divine. You don't have to earn it, achieve it, or prove you're worthy. You are a piece of God, a fragment of the infinite, walking around in a human body. Every time you love, forgive, or show kindness, you're letting that spark shine. James began to see this in his own life, and it transformed how he moved through the world. The way the morning sun warmed his skin? That was God, painting his day with light. The way his heart swelled when he helped a friend? That was God, flowing through his actions. Even the pain of his struggle as losing his job, missing his father, feeling lost, of those were God too, shaping him, teaching him, drawing him closer to the truth. Pain is a powerful teacher, isn't it? We often think spirituality is about feeling good all the time, about escaping the hard stuff. But that's not the whole story. Pain, loss, and struggle are sacred too. They're like the fire that refines gold, burning away what doesn't serve you to reveal the divine within. James realized his doubts and fears weren't obstacles, they were invitations to grow deeper, to trust more, to lean into God's presence. He thought back to the times he'd felt broken, when he lost his job, when he argued with a friend, when he lay awake wondering if he was enough. Those moments weren't punishments, they were part of the divine plan, guiding him toward a stronger, truer version of himself. Let's try something together. Take a moment today to sit in silence for 5 minutes. No phone, no distractions, just you and your breath. Close your eyes and ask, God, what do you want me to see? You might not hear words, but you might feel peace, an idea, or a gentle nudge in the right direction. That's God, speaking to you through your heart. James started doing this, and it became his anchor. He began praying, not with fancy words or memorized verses, but with raw honesty. He'd sit quietly and say, God, I'm here. Guide me. And God always answered it through a kind word from a stranger, a sudden burst of courage, or a quiet sense of knowing that everything would be okay. Prayer isn't about getting what you want, it's about aligning your heart with the divine. It's about trusting that you're never alone, even when the world feels heavy. James found that the more he prayed, the more he noticed God in the everyday. The way a bird sang outside his window, its melody cutting through the morning fog. That was God, singing to his soul. The way his mother's voice warmed his heart over the phone, even when they talked about nothing special. That was God, wrapping him in love. Even the rain that soaked his shoes on a tough day, making him laugh at his soggy socks. That was God too, reminding him to find joy in the mess. As James embraced this truth, he started living differently. He wasn't chasing the divine anymore, he was embodying it. He began practicing gratitude, not just for the big wins, but for the small, messy, beautiful moments of life. He'd say thank you for the air in his lungs, the smell of fresh coffee, the chance to try again tomorrow. Gratitude became his bridge to God, a way to see the divine in every moment. It was like putting on new glasses, seeing the world through the lens of love. Try this yourself, write down 3 things you're grateful for today. They don't have to be grand, maybe it's the warmth of your blanket, a kind text from a friend, or the fact that you're here, alive, and full of potential. That gratitude will open your heart to the spark within you, like a door swinging wide to let the light in. James also started serving others, not because he had to, but because it felt like a natural extension of the divine within him. He didn't have much to give, but he gave what he could of his time, his kindness, his presence. He helped a neighbor carry groceries, listened to a coworker share their struggles, and volunteered at a local shelter, serving meals with a smile. Every act of love felt like a prayer, a way to honor the divine in himself and others. He realized that the spark he'd seen in the woman's smile wasn't just in her, it was in everyone. When you see the good in others, when you offer kindness without expecting anything back, you're seeing God. You're creating a ripple effect of love that spreads far beyond what you can see. One day, James was at the shelter, handing out blankets to people who'd lost so much. A young woman named Sarah approached him, her eyes tired but curious. She'd noticed his calm, his warmth, the way he seemed to carry a quiet strength, even in a place filled with hardship. "James," she said, "you seem so at peace. How do you do it?" James paused, then smiled. He told her about the woman at the coffee shop, about Samuel's wisdom, and about the journey to find God within. "Sarah," he said, "you don't have to search for the divine. It's already in you. Every time you love, every time you forgive, every time you choose hope, that's God shining through you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and she whispered, "Can I find that too?" James nodded. "You already have it. Just listen to your heart. God's been there all along." That moment changed Sarah. She started noticing the small moments of grace in her life, the way a flower bloomed in her tiny garden, the warmth of a friend's hug, the peace of a quiet evening under the stars. She began her own journey, asking questions, sitting in silence, and opening her heart to the divine. And she wasn't the only one. James's story spread, not through preaching or grand gestures, but through the way he lived kindly, humbly, with an open heart that invited others to do the same. This is the magic of the divine spark. It's contagious. When you connect with God, you don't just change your own life, you light up the world around you. Your kindness, your courage, your love, they ripple out, touching hearts you may never meet. James saw this in his own life. His small acts of love inspired others to look within, to find their own spark. He realized that his search wasn't just about team up, it was about awakening the divine in everyone he met. It was like dropping a pebble in a pond, watching the ripples spread, touching lives in ways he couldn't predict. Let's talk about ripples for a moment. Think about a time you did something kind, even something small, like smiling at a stranger or helping a friend. That act didn't just end with aim up, it carried forward. Maybe that stranger smiled at someone else, or your friend felt brave enough to help another. That's the divine at work, moving through you, through others, weaving a web of love that connects us all. James began to see his life as part of this web, each choice a thread that strengthened the whole. He started paying attention to his actions, asking himself, is this love? Is this God? And the more he chose love, the brighter his spark grew. Here's a challenge for you, this week, do one small act of kindness. Hold the door for someone, call a friend you haven't spoken to in a while, or share a smile with a stranger. Notice how it feels. that warmth in your heart? That's the divine spark, growing stronger with every choice you make. James learned that spirituality isn't about reaching a perfect state or escaping life's challenges. It's about living with intention, seeing God in the ordinary, and choosing love even when it's hard. It's about showing up, day after day, and trusting that every step is part of a sacred journey. As James continued his path, he faced moments of doubt. There were days when life felt heavy, when the spark seemed dim, like a candle flickering in the wind. He'd lose his patience, snap at a coworker, or lie awake at night, wondering if he was doing enough. But he'd learned something: the divine doesn't disappear. It's always there, even in the darkness. On those tough days, he'd sit in silence, breathe deeply, and ask, "God, where are you?" The answer would come not in a grand vision, but in a quiet sense of peace, a reminder that he was never alone. He'd think back to the woman's smile, to Samuel's words, and feel the spark flicker back to life. Let's talk about those dark moments, because they're part of the journey too. We all have days when the world feels heavy, when doubt creeps in, when we wonder if we're on the right path. Those moments aren't failures, they're invitations to trust deeper. James realized that his struggles were like the shadows in a painting, giving depth and beauty to the light. He began to see his doubts as questions from God, asking, "Will you trust me? Will you keep going?" And every time he chose to say yes, he felt the divine spark grow stronger, like a fire fed by faith. Think about a time you faced a challenge. It may be a loss, a heartbreak, or a moment of uncertainty. What got you through? Maybe it was a friend's encouragement, a quiet moment of prayer, or a strength you didn't know you had. That strength was the divine, holding you up, guiding you forward. James learned to lean into this truth, to trust that every step of his journey, every joy, every pain was part of a divine plan. He began to see his life as a tapestry, woven with threads of love, struggle, hope, and growth, all held together by God's infinite love. You are part of that tapestry too. Your life, with all its ups and downs, is a sacred story. Every moment you choose to love, to forgive, to keep going, you're weaving a thread of divinity into the world. James realized that the spark he saw in that woman's smile wasn't just in her, it was in him, and it's in you too. You don't need to search the world to find God. You don't need to be perfect or have all the answers. God is in the quiet moments, the messy moments, the joyful moments. God is in you, right now, waiting for you to notice. Let's reflect on that for a moment. What if you stopped searching for the divine and started trusting it's already there? What if every breath, every heartbeat, every choice to love is a chance to connect with God? James began to live this way, seeing the divine in the ordinary. He'd walk through the park and notice the way the leaves danced in the wind, as if God was choreographing their movement. He'd listen to a friend's story and feel the divine in their shared laughter. Even in his mistakes, when he was impatient or afraid, he saw God, teaching him to grow, to be better, to love more deeply. Here's another practical step: try keeping a gratitude journal for a week. Each night, write down one moment that felt sacred, a kind word, a beautiful sight, a quiet feeling of peace. As you write, say thank you to God for that moment. James did this, and it transformed how he saw his life. he began to notice patterns and moments of grace that showed up when he needed them most. A stranger's smile on a bad day, a song on the radio that felt like a message, a sudden clarity about a problem. These weren't coincidences, they were God, speaking through the language of life. James also learned to forgive not just others, but himself. He'd carried guilt for years, for mistakes he'd made, for words he couldn't take back. But he realized that forgiveness is a divine act, a way to clear the dust from the mirror of his soul. He'd sit in prayer and say, "God, help me let go." And slowly, he did. He forgave the coworker who'd wronged him, the friend who'd drifted away, and most importantly, himself. Each act of forgiveness felt like a weight lifting, like a window opening to let the divine light pour in. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It's not about excusing harm, it's about freeing your heart to shine. Think about someone you need to forgive, or maybe it's yourself. Take a small step toward there, maybe a silent prayer, a kind thought, or a decision to let go. That's the divine spark at work, healing you, making you whole. James found that the more he forgave, the more he felt God's presence, like a river of love flowing through him. As James's journey unfolded, he realized that spirituality isn't about reaching a destination, it's about living with an open heart. It's about seeing God in the everyday, in the laughter and the tears, the victories and the struggles. He began to see his life as a sacred dance, each step a chance to move closer to the divine. He'd wake up each morning and say, "God, let me shine your light today." And he did, in small ways that added up to something beautiful. The man who saw divinity in a face didn't find God in the crowd. He found God in his own soul. And you can too. You are a spark of the divine, a piece of God's infinite love. Every breath you take, every choice you make, is a chance to shine that light. So, keep going. Keep loving. Keep trusting. The divine is closer than you think, it's in you, waiting to be unleashed. You don't need to be perfect or have it all figured out. Just show up, with all your flaws and fears, and let God work through you. This journey isn't always easy. There will be days when the spark feels dim, when doubt creeps in, when you wonder if you're doing it right. But those moments are part of the dance too. James learned to embrace them, to see them as opportunities to trust deeper, to love harder, to shine brighter. He'd think back to that woman's smile, to the moment that started it all, and feel the spark flicker back to life. It was always there, waiting for him to notice, like a star that shines even behind the clouds. So, what's your next step? Maybe it's taking a moment to pray, to say, "God, I'm here. Show me the way." Maybe it's forgiving yourself for a mistake or reaching out to someone you've lost touch with. Maybe it's just being still, listening to the divine spark within you. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to take one step, then another, trusting that God is with you, guiding you, loving you through it all. Thank you for joining me on this journey, beautiful souls. James's story is a reminder that the divine is never far away, it's in you, in me, in every moment we choose to see it. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment below. Tell me, when have you felt the divine spark in your life? Let's keep this conversation going. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so we can keep exploring these spiritual truths together. And if you're feeling extra inspired, consider supporting this channel with the $40 super thanks up. It helps us keep creating content like this to uplift and inspire you. Until next time, keep shining your divine light. You are a spark of God, and the world needs your love.